Welcome to the Momming with Jesus podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Hargrove. On this show, I help moms discover Jesus in their motherhood. I hope this show encourages you in your mom journey. Enjoy the message. Welcome to the Momming with Jesus podcast. I am so thrilled and excited to have one of my very close and very special friends, Steph Ayala, joining us today. And before we get started, I want to introduce her and share a little bit about her before she gets to share even more about her life and story. But Stephanie Ayala, she is from San Antonio, Texas, which is where we live right now. She works as an office manager and a drug counseling intern. She's on the path to obtaining a master's degree. She has been going at it and doing such a great job. She's getting a degree in marriage and family therapy, concentrating specifically on trauma. Her career aspirations are deeply rooted in her desire to establish her own private practice focused on Christian counseling, aiming to specialize in assisting individuals and their family in navigating the challenges of addiction and trauma. She's engaged right now and is set to be married in October, which is so exciting. Stephanie values her time with friends, working out, spiritual growth through spending time with Jesus. Her home is shared with a beloved cat and 2 dogs. And she, like I said at the beginning, is such a dear friend of mine. I'm telling you, she is one of the most intentional and just genuine friends. And I say that all the time. And I really mean it. So I am honored to have her as a special guest on this episode. And she's going to be sharing so much of her powerful journey and testimony of what God has done in her life. So, Steph, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And so there's a lot of different things. Well, a couple of different things we're going to talk about today, Steph. And, you know, before we get to some of the deeper things, do you want to start off by sharing a little bit of your faith journey? How did your faith journey kind of unravel?
Yeah, so I I grew up in a Hispanic family, and my family, they raised me as Catholic.
Mhm.
While I did believe in Jesus, I knew who God was. It was a very conditional and transactional type of relationship that I had with God. And I grew up with the understanding that things happened or didn't happen based off of my actions. So God didn't bless me because of this, or this is happening because God is punishing me. I was even told that as a child, like God's going to punish you if you do this. And I remember, going down to, there's a place in Texas called San Juan, and it's really a place, it's essentially like an altar to the Virgin Mary. And we make something called promesas, and they're basically promises to the Virgin Mary, like, hey, if I refrain from this, or if I do this, in exchange, you'll do this for me. And
Mhm.
so we go down there. A lot of Hispanic families go down there, and we light a candle to the Virgin Mary, and we pray to her and basically just thank her. And
Mhm.
so whenever I was growing up, I would go to God, but really whenever I just needed something, I would pray. I remember being a child and praying to God and saying the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and I remember wanting to read the Bible, but I didn't know how.
Right.
And when I was about 18 years old, I remember one of my close friends and we used to party together. And I remember one of my close friends, he started going to a non-denominational church here in San Antonio. And I just remember him changing. And I remember him inviting me to church, and I met his friends, and I remember wanting what he had. I was like, oh, wow, he actually has friends like that don't want to party, that want to go out to eat, that want to actually
Mhm.
get to know me and don't really care about what I have or what I do, or they just wanted to know me.
Mhm.
And I remember my friend ministering to me and saying, like, you don't. I remember talking to my friend and describing a void that I had. And I was like, I have this void in my heart. Like, I can't seem to fill it. I party, I date guys, I do this, and just nothing's filling that void. And my friend ministered to me and just told me, like, you're not ever going to fill it until you find Jesus. And from that moment on, I started to really learn and connect who Jesus actually is. So,
Right.
yeah.
Wow, that's a really powerful story. I know that we've talked about like our faith journey so much together, but I don't know if I've ever heard like just the origin of like even that simple conversation
Mhm.
with like a friend, and it just shows so much power in like, our own personal decisions. When we begin to grow closer to Jesus, we don't realize that our decisions to grow closer to Jesus can literally change the course of one of our friends' lives simply from the example. You saw that he was changing, you saw that something was different, and you were like, I want that. I'm
Mhm.
hungry for that. And it led you all the way to you are a genuine full-blown Christian, if you will. And that was like a seed, and not even a huge seed of like, hey, I need to talk to you about Jesus right here and there. It was just their lifestyle and example, and like how powerful that is. So I just love to hear like where your story originated from, and just like the genuine power of like Christian community and friends, like, and the
Yeah.
impact it has in our life. So that's powerful. Thank you for sharing
Absolutely.
that.
You never know who's watching you. I will say that.
Right.
You
Yeah.
never I've been told like our ministry is just by our actions sometimes, you know?
Right.
Like
Mhm.
if uh, as a new believer, I was really yearning for that. And so our actions and our lifestyles are more powerful than we think.
Oh yeah, I totally agree on that. So, right now I know, and you're in our bio here for we shared a little bit about what you do, but can you share a little bit more about what you're currently pursuing with your career, even your education? So, kind of like share like where did that pursuit and desire even start, and like what are you doing now?
Okay, so when I was originally going to school, this was, when I was 18, several years ago now.
Mhm.
Um, I knew that I wanted to help people. I just didn't really know to what capacity. And I went to school originally to become a school count. I wanted to be a school psychologist, do
Right.
some sort of school. There's a difference between school counseling and school psychology, and I wanted to pursue school psychology, work with kids that have special needs,
Mhm.
and be like an educational diagnostician, which basically assesses kids with special needs and make
Right.
sure that they get the correct resources that they need.
Mhm.
So I wanted to do that. And while I was in college, I had struggled with addiction in high school, but in college is really when it took off.
Right.
And from that moment, I remember going in and out of treatment centers, and I knew good treatment and I saw bad treatment.
Mhm.
And I remember coming out of it and being like, wow, like reflecting on some of the drug counselors that really made an impact in my life and really wanting to pay that forward. And I really had a special place in my heart for people struggling with addictions.
Right.
So moving forward, I went to school. I solely wanted to focus on individuals. And in one of my classes during my senior year of college, I learned that families who are struggling with their loved ones and that are enduring the challenges of addiction, they also face a lot of trauma and a lot of hardship and heartache, and they kind of go unseen. They're like, well, my individual needs the help. I don't really need the help. Or once they get better, I'll get better. And that's not really the
Right.
case.
Mhm.
And I read in one of my textbooks that families and individuals don't really have the resources to take on both issues at once. So, to take on the addiction and the family issues while
Right.
also navigating the individual themselves.
Mhm.
Um, so, I remember praying to God, and I was like, okay, God, like, if this is something you want me to do, if you want me to change my career to marriage and family therapy, I remember saying, let me see a robin, or let me see a blue jay for doing individuals, which is just an LPC, or doing a robin for marriage and family therapy.
Right.
Well, the next day I'm out on my hike and I see a robin, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was just coincidental, like
Yeah.
not a big deal. So I ask him again, and a few days later I see the same thing, and I'm like, okay, that's really just coincidental. There's a lot of robins here. Like, let me switch it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, God, if you want me to do marriage and family therapy, let me see a blue jay. And if you want me to do LPC and focus on individuals, let me see a robin. Well,
Right.
not even like a day later, I saw a blue jay. And I was like, okay, this
Wow.
is just, and it kept going, right?
Yes.
I
Mhm.
didn't have, okay, so I'll get there. It kept going. So I was like, okay, God, if this is really you, let me see an abundance of robins for marriage and family therapy, and let me see an abundance of blue jays for LPC. So not even 2 or 3 days later, I was driving and I saw three robins flying together. And I was
Wow.
like, okay, God. And I still really struggled with this. I didn't really have peace in my heart about this because I'm not married. I don't have kids. And I'm like, God, I'm not qualified to do this. Like, I have no idea what it's like to have a kid struggling or a family member struggling, but God quickened me because of I do know what it's like. And
Right.
I have substance use in my family. I lost my fiance indirectly to his substance use disorder, and but it's God was able to show me also. Someone talked to me about the story of Gideon too, when God was like, God,
Mhm.
I'm not qualified to do this, and
Right.
I was like, God, can you give me peace about this? Please give me peace. Well, ended up having a dream that I was talking to someone and I was telling them that I was a marriage and family therapist and God gave me peace about it. And I was just talking about it. And
Wow.
it was really incredible. So it was something that like I couldn't really ignore at that point. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, if I don't think God would have gotten upset if I did the individual route, but I just felt like God really
Right.
wanted to bless me in this route,
Right.
or bless, not even me, bless other people, because it's
Mhm.
really not about me. So
Right.
that's,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
so
remember.
now,
Uh-huh.
go
Mhm.
ahead,
No, no,
sorry.
no. Go ahead. No, go. Uh-huh.
So now, I started my internship or my practicum, which is a little bit different than an internship. Your practicum is more like while you're a student. So I started my practicum at New Day Recovery Services, and it's an intensive outpatient program. And I remember praying to God, and I was like, God, this would be really cool if I worked here. Like, I really want to work here. And yeah, they hired me on. So that was really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
hmm Yeah, no, that is just so powerful. I remember talking with you here and there when you were trying to make that decision that you were mentioning a while ago. And then just to see, like, even when you shared your heart before sharing that big decision, your heart always seemed like you were, just so for the whole situation, which is the individual and the family, and really helping all of them as a whole walk through these like challenges. And then to see, like, I love to, like, it's just so um, amazing how God really does care about our decisions and the details. Do we have free will? Yes. Will God kind of walk us through those decisions? Yes. But the fact that your heart was more than, oh, I can do what I want. I actually really do want the best. I want what God wants for me. I want, even if it's not like, just like you had mentioned, like, oh, I don't know. A part of you at first was like, "Ah, I don't know if that's like the exact thing I think I want to do." But then still surrendering that to God and then realizing, you know what, at the end of the day, this is what I want to do and the best place for me to walk in, if that makes sense, and pursue. Because there's so much more to the picture than you may have been able to see in that moment, in those moments of that big decision. And to see that God was just so simple too, to like, okay, like he answers our simple prayers, even if it's a sign or something big or something smaller, like because our heart is to honor him and like, God, I want to know your will, which path to take. He's not going to just be up there and like not answer us. Like sometimes we feel like that too in those big decisions of our life. And it almost feels like our brain is too crowded and we can't hear him. And it's just because we're so afraid to make the wrong decision. But sometimes when we just simplify it, put it before God, like he'll answer us in the most simple, coolest ways. And to see that God gave you that peace and now you are pursuing that. And now you're at a place and a job that you prayed for and desired, and that door just quickly opened to you. And so much more is just so amazing. And I still never forget that one time we spoke, me and you, at local coffee years ago when you were really just kind of starting to pursue the schooling and career path for what you're doing now. And I remember you just sharing your heart and like, okay, even like the thoughts of like, I want to do this, but can I? It's going to be a lot. Should I? And you've done it and it's been hard, but like to see how far you've come and to see God leading you through it all is just beautiful. And, like I've said before, I'm really proud of you because it's just such a powerful place to be. And it's not an easy career path because you are handling the lives and hearts of so many people, but someone like you that would be willing to do that. is just such a beautiful thing. So I love that stuff. And thank you for sharing that part of your life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And so as we, heard your heart where you're at right now, which again is such a beautiful testimony, I want to ask if we can talk a little bit deeper. I, have had the opportunity to kind of see you find true freedom through your sobriety journey. Just a glimpse of it, right? As we became great friends and to see where you're at now, like I've said many times, is truly a testimony of God and your hard work. But do you mind starting to share a little bit about your story? Like, where did the struggle with substance begin? If you don't mind kind of sharing some of that origin. And also with that question, where did you, see where things change, such as, you know, you started off young, like many of us, right? Maybe that included drinking, maybe, substances, I don't know specifically. And many of us in high school, yeah, not everyone, but many of us dabble into that. Where did you begin to see the difference from the typical behavior of teenagers and some of that to, oh no, like I think this is an actual uh issue that I need to work through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Where did I lose control?
Right, exactly. So where
Um,
did it begin for you? Hmm.
yeah, so like you said, in high school, I would party a lot, and I honestly think that no, with the information that I know now as being a drug counselor,
Hmm.
I think I could have definitely used an intervention in high school. I really think that would have completely altered the course of my life.
Yeah.
But we don't know what we don't know, right?
Right.
So in high school, I definitely think it was a red flag that I was about 14. I just turned 15 years old. I had started smoking marijuana, and then I quickly, not even like 2 weeks later, started taking ecstasy.
Wow.
And by my sophomore year, I mean, I had pretty much lost track of how many times I had taken ecstasy.
Mm.
And I went from like 0 to 100. And there's just like, that was just the start of like my addictive personality, just doing anything just to get out of myself, getting out of how I was feeling at that moment, because I was really going through a lot of mental health struggles. I was struggling with depression, and I really think that's where having anxiety kind of started to form.
Mhm.
And I was having problems at home, but I also was having problems at school. And it was one thing. I was never really in a safe space. And the only time that I felt safe was when I was using.
Right.
And so moving forward, I remember in college, I had gotten prescribed to Adderall, and I was at a dose that was definitely higher than I should have been.
Mhm.
And I was also prescribed, while I was prescribed Adderall, I was also prescribed to another substance called Vyvanse, which is a sister of Adderall.
Mhm.
And I didn't know at the time, but being about 18, 19 years old, I had signed off paperwork saying that I would become a research patient for this drugs, for these
Mhm.
drugs. Yes.
Mhm.
So I was prescribed 60 milligrams of Adderall, which is the highest dose you can get prescribed, along with I forgot what the dosage was for Vyvanse, but along with the high dose of Vyvanse. And I was supposed to take the Vyvanse and the Adderall at the same time in the morning, take another dose of Adderall mid-afternoon, and then take another dose of Adderall by the evening. And so
Wow.
I was just constantly on something, right?
Yeah.
And I was a sophomore in college at this time. So I was about 19, 20 years old. And I was about to transfer to Baylor. And that was like the school that I wanted to go to, one of my dream schools. And I was doing great. I was an honor student. I was at the top of my class. And at this point, I started to kind of lose control of my
Mhm.
addiction. It was very socially acceptable to take more Adderall, to study
Right.
for finals, to everyone was kind of like, here, do you need an Adderall? Here, do you need this? Let's get through these
Right.
finals, let's do this. So once I actually got to Baylor, I mean, I just lost complete control,
Right.
like completely lost control of my addiction. And at that point, I remember actually crying going from San Antonio to Waco, because I was just honestly, I was just so under the influence that I couldn't handle it.
Right.
I remember at that point describing to my mom, I was like, "Mom, I feel like I'm a prisoner, like, I feel like I have to take these medicines," and at that point, I was describing addiction, and I was
Right.
like, "I wanna stop, but I can't stop." And, I remember this, guy that I was dating at the time, he would take Vicodin, and
Right.
so he was like, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And I'm like, "Okay, what do these do?" "These are just pain medications."
Right.
And, one thing led to another, and I realized that I wanted to always feel that way,
Wow.
Vicodin, and I eventually ended up replacing Adderall with Vicodin, and I withdrew from Baylor because I couldn't handle it, I just
Yeah.
couldn't. And at that point, I jumped from school to school to school, hoping to outrun my addiction. I was like, okay, well, that school is just too hard. That's why I keep abusing drugs because I need
Right.
it for finals or because I need it to study harder. And yeah, and I couldn't outrun it because I was a
Right.
problem with a lot of the schools.
Right.
So that's really when it started. I was about, gosh, maybe 21, 22 at that point when it just like between 19 or 22 is when it all started to unravel.
Right. Wow. Well, I feel like hearing your story, it just the truth is that there's so many other people who easily kind of get wrapped into this not cycle, if you will, but almost downward cycle, especially in college, because like you said, it was so socially acceptable to take this and that. And the truth is that's so much more common than well, I'm sure you realize as you work with different people than we realize, and how many people go their whole life kind of dealing with that. And again, going back to like I'm just so happy to know that you're in a place now where you're able to help people just like that in their different experiences and struggles with that because it's not necessarily an easy life to live. Like you said, like you wanted to stop, but you felt like you couldn't because the truth is addiction is strong. And sometimes we fall victim to it. We're not trying to. Nobody wakes up wanting to feel victim to these substances, but they have more power than we realize in those moments of vulnerability. So thank you for sharing, where it kind of started for you and how that unraveled. I know that there's many people that might hear this and even relate and feel even like, okay, like I'm not the only one who's experienced that and felt that way. Um, and so tell me this as we're moving forward, as you share your story, what made you decide to seek out freedom from this sobriety? Like, what were some of the moments in your life where you said, I need to find either help or support or freedom from this?
Yeah, so gosh, there were several different points. I think whenever I first reached out for help, I was actually about 23 years old and I had overdosed and accidentally overdosed. And I remember I my sisters actually told me that if I didn't get help that I could no longer have a relationship with them or my nephews.
Wow.
And so I went to treatment for the first time for only about 4 days. I left and then my mom told me that I needed to go to treatment. And my dad grabbed me and told me that if I didn't go to treatment, I could either live out on the streets or get out of his house.
Wow.
So I went to treatment. And at that point, this was 2015. And from 2015 until the end of 2016, I was just in and out of treatment, just in and out of treatment. And it actually got worse while I was in treatment. So I went from using Vicodin and to using heroin, IV
Wow.
heroin, and, after that, I remember my mom, she had caught me this was in 2000 gosh, so this was in 2017 going to 2018. I remember she caught me using again, and I remember she was like, "Okay, you need to go back to treatment." I was like, hold on, like, let me just try AA." So I went to try AA and I stayed sober for about 18 months.
Wow.
And then I relapsed again. And that was when I relapsed, my life just at that point, I already knew what sobriety felt like. And I knew
Right.
that I wanted it because I felt the freedom. I felt what it was like to have friends and I felt what it was like to be connected to Christ. And I felt
Yeah.
like once I started using, it was just completely cut off. And
Right.
My finances would go out the door very quickly. My well-being, I would, isolate. It was just horrible. And that was whenever I had reached out to you and your husband asking for help, and
Mhm.
and I was able to get delivered from it. So it was just
Right.
what really just made me want to reach out for help ultimately was just me being sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I didn't
Right.
want to die. And I remember during my last relapse, I had this really strong conviction. I didn't know it at the time, but it was actually was I was told that, and I have confirmed that it was just the Holy Spirit speaking to me like, hey, if you don't get this together, like you're not gonna make it. And I knew that I wasn't gonna make it either,
Mhm.
and it was just an ugly feeling.
Right.
The ugly feeling.
Right. Thank you for sharing that because I know that's a vulnerable part of this story and your journey. But it sounds like from what you shared, like there was a couple of factors in you really wanting to just finally seek out freedom. And I know that it's completely normal in these kind of journeys to have a couple times, right, where we're seeking freedom and then fall back. And because it's not easy to cut that off. But it sounded like first it was your family really caring because they wanted freedom for you. And that seems like it gave like that first notch in your heart of like, okay, well, I don't want to lose them. I love them. I need them. So I better find help. And then it came to a place where, you're like, wait, like, I don't want this for myself. Like, I'm feeling like crap and this is like risking my life. And then moving forward to finally, experiencing freedom and tasting what that felt like. And even in the times of, falling back, even in those moments, you realize this isn't what I want. Like, I tasted freedom. That's what I want. So, how do I get back to that place? And again, to see where you're at now is just such a testimony. And we'll share more about this in a minute, but I love how like your heart, as we've talked over this past several months too, that you have found in your personal journey, just that you can try all kinds of practical things and they all serve a purpose, such as, facilities or rehabs or treatments or AA, all of those play a part for sure in this journey. But I know that a passion of your heart now is how much Christ himself plays a huge role in the freedom. That it's like that the practical side of it is one piece of the equation. And for you, you have found that Jesus has to be in that equation to truly find the full healing. Um, and we can elaborate on that in a minute, but our next question is kind of a two-sided question. And so on one side of the coin, what in this journey of you trying to find freedom, what did you try and so what did you try and what failed? And then what was a big factor and even decision that finally led you to freedom? So really like what didn't work and what worked for you?
Okay.
Mhm.
So what didn't work for me was moderation. I tried to drink in moderation. I tried to use in moderation and it never worked. And I
Right.
also would try to excuse it, excuse my use like, oh, well, the doctor wrote me this prescription, so it must be fine. And
Right.
to me personally, it's not fine because I will, if you give me an inch, I will take a mile. That's just how
Okay.
my personality is. And I've learned that through many trial and error.
Right.
And what didn't work for me was solely relying, and I'm not here to bash any 12-step programs. I think they're great. But what did not work for me was solely relying on a 12-step program simply because I need Christ. And what keeps me sober is it's today what actually works today is having an ongoing consistent relationship with Christ, because
Mm.
I can go to AA several times. I can do all that, but while that is helpful, yes, that's
Right.
great. That's awesome. It actually it helps me keep myself in check and being a better person. I
Right.
will say that helps me. Definitely helped me discontinue certain characteristics and certain behaviors into my recovery.
Mhm.
But what actually keeps me sober and keeps me wanting to be a better person is just God,
Yeah.
that today that looks like me reading the Bible every day, that looks like me going to church on Sundays and not
Yeah.
making excuses. And I would find
Right.
myself at various points in my recovery saying, oh, well, I don't really need to go to church today. I'm really tired.
Right.
But I would use that and be like, okay, if I was never too tired to go out and go get drugs. I was
Right,
never
right.
too tired to go out with my friends. I was never too tired, but that's just I can come up with excuses as long as I'm alive, as long as I allow
Yeah,
them to. And
yeah,
what helps me today too is just being of service. And that can include what that looks like for me today is being of service at church, checking
yeah,
with friends. If
yeah,
I know someone's struggling, just being there for them.
yeah,
And I think a total game changer for me, like I said, is just having an ongoing, constant connection with Jesus.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's powerful. From what you shared, I could see 3 points that you shared that are very powerful for, I think, whoever's listening to really like take in. So the first one is that moderation doesn't work. So if we have found ourselves in a more so an addictive personality, there are some people that can have a drink, can do this. That's great. But if, someone is in the journey of finding sobriety, I've also heard other people share that in their journey of that they thought as well that they could do these things in moderation. And it's a hard decision and a realization to realize, no, I can't, because it feels so definite and it sucks. Like it does. But at the end of the day, when we continue to look back and realize, what do those things serve for me? If alcohol or substances were the vice that led us down a downward spiral, at the end of the day, why do I want just a little? Why do I need that? We don't. But yes, it is a hard decision. But I think that's definitely like a personal decision for people navigating through this journey. People can tell them every day, no, you can't just have one drink. No, you can't. It comes down to like being willing to surrender it all. And, I know that you have in your journey came to a place where you did that. And it was just, for yourself, like you expressed, like a game changer. And it's just the truth. I know that my journey is totally different, but for me too, I had to surrender for me like alcohol years ago when I was 18. There was a time where I drank it again. And it just like literally within that week, I went down this downward spiral. And in that moment that I was literally over the toilet throwing up at an ex-boyfriend's house because I drank, okay, I felt, and that's just being real here, I felt the Holy Spirit literally reach out to me in that state of mind and asking me, is this what you want? I literally felt it in this sobering moment. And I said, no, this is not what I want. And that was the last day I ever drank. And that was all the way in, I don't even 2011. Right. And so it's just crazy to realize. Well, my point is just there's just power to just realize that there is going to be a moment where you have to understand that you're either all in or you're not, and it will change the course of your future. Um, and then I know you shared 2 other points on that, but and I love what you shared kind of about the 12-step program. When you shared that, I agree with what you're saying. That's not going to be the entirety of this journey that will save you. What is positive from it is it gives you great, practical things to apply to your life. And even, it has they kind of share the concept of finding your own God. What I do appreciate is that they help you see that there is light in the darkness. But what you're sharing is like, at the end of the day, we know it's Jesus. You can't make your own God. You can't determine what that light is. What's great is it will show you in a place of darkness, there is light. Let's find it. But your heart is so powerful, and how you ended what you shared here is you realize that it was Jesus. Having an intimate daily relationship with him is what has kept you literally grounded in your sobriety. And a lot of people may try to find that in different ways, but we're going to realize so quickly that there's no other way but
Mhm.
through him. And so just very powerful, the things that you share, those 3 things. And thank you for doing that. Hello, beautiful souls. This community thrives on shared stories, laughter, tears, and the strength that we draw from God's word and each other. As we navigate the symphony of motherhood together, our mission is to uplift, support, and empower every mom listening. To keep our sanctuary vibrant and accessible, we are reaching out for your support. Whether you want to become a monthly supporter or by giving a one-time donation of the price of your favorite latte, your generosity helps us continue to bring content that touches the heart, nurtures the soul, and strengthens our faith and fellowship as moms. If our conversations have been a companion to you in your moments of need, joy, or reflection, consider contributing to our cause. Just visit laurenahargrove.com and find the support tab. It's quick, simple, and your support means the world to us and to mothers everywhere. Thank you for being a part of our journey, for sharing your highs and lows, and for Mommy with Jesus. Now let's return to today's episode. So moving on, what are some basic first steps or tips that you can share with someone who doesn't know where to start to pursue sobriety? So maybe they hear this and they're like, you know what, like I'm ready, like, but where do I start?
I would definitely recommend simply reaching out to a safe person, reaching out to, if you need detox or anything like that, going to a local detox, Googling detoxes, and really just reaching out to someone who is safe, someone who you can talk to about this because you're not alone.
Right.
And it may feel like the world is just crashing down on you. And it may be the hardest phone call you'll ever have to make, but it's so worth it. And
Right.
it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be challenging, but it's supposed to be because
Right.
using using is hard within itself, but also staying that way is even harder.
Right.
And navigating the challenges of sobriety is also hard. So it's kind of like pick your heart. And one
Yeah.
heart could lead to death. And
Right.
so, it maybe not even be a physical death, it may be just simply spiritual death and
Right.
a death of the connections around you, a death of the goals that you want to pursue. And there's a lot of death involved, and it may not just be physical.
Right.
And
Yeah. And
so,
it, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please do. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, even going to reaching out to a local pastor, reaching out to a local uh even going to a meeting and reaching out to
Right.
someone who can talk to you about what your struggles are.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that's a very practical, not easy, but easy first step. Again, not easy, but easy, if that makes sense. Like all you have to do is reach out, grab the phone, grab whatever you need to do. And, maybe at the end of this, I'll ask you for any resources, even the facility that you work at, and I can try to link it in the show notes for people that want to just quickly look at these different local resources. And yeah, so reaching out to a friend, reaching out to a facility, whoever, whatever it is, I think is a great first step. So, um, what would you say to someone who has tried several times and feels like they can't break through this fight? So they're at a place they're not just starting, they've tried, maybe they feel like they failed over and over and they're just frustrated. What would you say to them?
Don't give up. And I know that sounds so cliche. I have struggled myself so many times. I mean, I was a chronic relapser,
Yeah.
and I was what you would call even like a quote unquote, like, I don't like this term, but this is just the best way to describe where I was like
Yeah.
a failure to launch. Like, I just could
Yeah.
not launch.
Yeah.
And depending on what substances you're using, there are medications out there that can help you. This isn't a permanent solution, but maybe just to get you up on your feet, get you walking until you can learn to run on your own. And kind
Right.
of like training wheels. There are medications out there that can help you. You can put on some training wheels and help you take those first steps to recovery and being stable. There's
Right.
a lot of therapy out there, and God has not given up on you.
Yeah.
And even though your loved ones or people that you thought loved you might have given up on you, God has not given up on you. He does not
Mm,
want this for you, and He loves you so much. He loves you more than you can ever possibly understand. He does not want this life for you. And there is there is light at the end of the tunnel, but you've got to fight. And I know that if people have the fight to get high every day and go through the chaos of obtaining their drugs, you have the fight to go through the chaos of early recovery.
right.
You have those tools. You have the determination. You have the perseverance that God has given you. Addicts have a very unique gift of setting a goal and obtaining that goal. And we've
Yeah.
just skewed the gift that God has given us, and we're using it
Mm,
for something bad, but you can use it for recovery. You can use that same will, that same drive, that same determination to get sober. We just got
yeah.
to reroute you to that.
That's powerful. No, thank you for sharing that. I think just as simple as hearing don't give up, but truly like even your heart that you express like in God's love, like it is so hard to even feel like we have the power or the worthiness, if that's the right way to say it. But, because yeah, people will get, along the way may or may not be there for you, but just having that security and hope, knowing that, dude, God isn't going to give up. up on me, like I can get back up, even if it's one more time. Once again, like I can do this. And I like how you are like sharing, like to redirect, what is within us for the positive for our own life. And like that we have the power to do that. Um, so very powerful. Thank you for sharing that stuff. Um, we're coming to a close here in just a couple more questions. Um, I've also seen you walk through one of the hardest times of your life, Stephanie, and you lost someone very special to you. And again, my heart has always expressed my condolences to that. And I just love you so much. So I know that that was a very tough circumstance. And we're talking about the topic of grief. And what are 3 words of hope that you can share with someone in dark hours of grief? So, whatever you want to share on this topic, I know it's a very sensitive, vulnerable topic, but if there's some words of hope you can share to someone that is feeling the darkness of grief, what would that be?
The 3 words that I would want to share with someone are peace, strength, and courage. I also might add in one more, self-care.
Right,
Um, and I mean, I can't just sum it up to three or even 4. I want to put on there forgiveness too, because
right.
I feel like with grief becomes a lot of blame, and
Mhm.
finding forgiveness in whoever or whatever that blame is being geared towards.
Right.
Yeah. So, I knowing that your loved one is with God and is with Jesus. And I do believe that God's promises are real, that you will see them on the other side, and they are experiencing a peace and a love that surpasses all understanding. And it's okay to talk to God, and it's okay to ask why. However, looking into what really got me through my grief was the book of Job, and really
Mhm.
knowing, like, even if God does come down here and tells us like why exactly things happen the way that they happen, we won't be able to understand, because his ways are not our ways. And God is so good.
Yeah.
And even though God is still good, even though someone close to you went to go be with him.
Right.
And it may not have happened the way that we wanted to happen, but knowing that God's grace and God's love is just he will bring you through this. And it's okay to be sad, and it's
Yeah.
okay to be in pain. And God is close to the brokenhearted.
Yeah.
And there sometimes I don't have any words
Yeah.
to help people through their grief. It's really just time too, and just trusting that your loved one is with God, and that
Yeah.
things will get better, and it's okay for it to hurt.
Yeah. No, definitely. And one last thought on that topic is, in the times of grief where maybe it's more fresh and it feels like the thought in your head of like, how can I ever, in a sense, not move on, that's not the word, but get past this. I feel like I'm going to be here forever in this state of, mourning. What was something that helped you get through that, and then even like at a place where you're at now, like to in a sense live your life even though your heart wants to be right next to them? Does that make sense? Like learn to kind of live and continue your life.
Yeah, so something that personally helped me, I'll just give a little bit of backstory for those that don't know about the grief. So I did lose my fiance in 2019, as an indirect result of his addiction. He got into a car accident, and while he was under the influence, and that grief was just overwhelming. I mean, it consumed me. And I remember, what really helped me, there were several different points in my grief journey, especially during the first year, just to be gentle with yourself and be kind with yourself. And I remember literally praying every single day to God, and just physically saying, like, to God, God, I lay my grief at the foot of your cross. I lay my grief at the foot of your cross, just surrendering it, because God knows what it's like to grieve. God
Yeah.
Himself was put on the cross,
Mhm.
and he knows what it's like to be broken and to be
Yeah.
hurt. And I what really just helps someone get through it, well, is just giving yourself time.
Yeah.
And surrendering that heartache to God every single
Right.
day. Sometimes I would have to do it multiple times a day.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Just there's like you've kind of expressed at the end of the day, like to get through grief is to go through it. And there's no way around it but time. And I think that you sharing the power of like surrender, that doesn't mean it's going to go away, but acknowledging every day, like, I can't hold this. Like, I can't hold it. God, please take it on a daily basis gives you just the opportunity to put it somewhere, to give it away instead of holding it day by day and allowing like the grace of God to see you through that. So I
I
pray that
think,
that reaches. Go ahead.
yeah, and I think also what was really important for me to know is like we'll never move on from
Yeah.
losing a loved one, but we
Right.
will move forward with them. And our loved ones
Hmm.
want us to move forward with them. And the grief will never size down, but you learn to grow around your grief. So you grow bigger, but your grief, it'll get smaller because you are growing.
Right, right. No, that's a very powerful like perspective. And like, because some people might feel the fear of like, I don't want to leave them behind. No one does and no one should. But like knowing that I can move forward with them, the love that I have for them, but I can move forward. That doesn't
Yes.
mean leaving them behind. And so I think those are powerful perspectives. And I think I pray that it reaches who it needs to reach. And so thank you for sharing that part of your story. And so, as we close up, Steph, let me ask you, what is God speaking to you in this season of your life?
Oh gosh, God is speaking to me to rest,
Yeah,
to not be so consumed by just the daily craziness,
right,
you just and not only just to rest, and just do nothing, but rest in Him and
right.
to start my day off with the Lord and
Hmm.
to always make time for Him because
Right.
I can so easily be consumed with, work, school, this, that, and it's just, I can come up with excuses, but if I don't have time to rest with God, then I'm not going to rest at all. Even whenever I'm laying down, I'm still going to be
Yes.
craving that connection with God.
Right. Right. Amen to that, because I know that you are so busy, but to know that even in this season, you're like, no, I need God before. And I like what you said is like, I can't rest even when I'm trying to rest if you haven't been able to have that place for God in your day. And I think that's so, so powerful. So love that. What is one of your favorite Bible verses and why?
Oh gosh. Okay. So my absolute favorite one is Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. What I like about that verse is because no matter what it is, whether it's addiction, whether it's grief, whether it's divorce, whether it's a breakup, doesn't matter what it is, all things happen for good.
Right. Right.
It doesn't exclude the addiction, it doesn't exclude the death, it doesn't exclude the divorce, it doesn't exclude the trauma.
Yes.
All things happen for good to those who are called
Mm,
according to his purpose. And I speak that verse over every single person that's listening to this. I speak that verse over you and I. And I have learned through even the darkest of my journey that God has worked all those things for good. And I'm able
yes.
to use that for a greater purpose today.
Right. Amen to that. I love that verse and I love the heart that you shared behind it. And the truth is as you look back in your life, you're able to see this verse a reality. It doesn't just sound pretty, like you have seen God do that in your life. And I think if we all take a moment to look back, we will be able to see pockets of our life where we see how God turned it around. And maybe we're in a season where we're still waiting for that, but God is going to use this season to bring something beautiful. So, Steph, now we are concluding our time. What is one last thought or word of encouragement that you want to leave with us before we end our time together?
One last thought would be that Jesus loves you and don't give up. Whatever that
Yes.
may look like, don't give up. God is with you, God hears you, and God has not forsaken you.
Amen. Thank you for that, Steph. And if someone listening today wants to connect with you, what is the best way that they can reach out to you?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram, steph.desiree, or you can also text me, or I'll just put my number out there. It's Actually, maybe I'll do my email.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Steph, STEPHAYALA 91 at Gmail. Please email me and then I'll give you my telephone number through the email and we can connect there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being willing to open yourself to those who might find encouragement by your what you shared today, and even just support through you. Again, you've been like one of the greatest friends, and just such a supportive person. So, Steph, thank you for sharing your heart, your story, your testimony today. It is just filled with the power of God and what He can do in someone's life. And again, I'm incredibly proud of you as an individual, and just your heart for God, heart for his people. And just thank you for being here. And I love you.
Love you too. Thank you for having me, Lauren.
Of course. I hope you found encouragement today. I'd love to connect with you. You can find me by following Lauren A. Hargrove on Instagram or Facebook. And before you go, can you do me a favor and leave a rating and review for this show? I would greatly appreciate it, and it would help other moms better find the show too. With that, thank you for being a part of our community today, and until next time.